either. There is stuff to memorize, but it's certainly not as intense as that fraction lecture performance. So this one, I think the live is a little bit more user-friendly. So we're going to divide this into angular deformities and then flexural deformities. So we're going to start with angular deformities. And when I'm talking about angular versus flexural, angular is if you're looking at the horse from the front and you see weird deviations in the, medial lateral, basically. Looking at it from the front, when you talk about flexural deformities, you'll see those from the side, and that's like hyperextension and hyperflexion. So here at first, we're going to talk about two major categories: medial or lateral deviations that live distal to the location of the problem. All right, so you find where you have a location of the problem, and then you look at where the angle is distal to that. All right, so here what we have is the location of the problem is the carpus, and there's a deviation laterally after we're distal to that carpus. Okay, so same here, varus, draw a straight line, you're pretty straight here, and then all of a sudden you're deviating medially, so that would be a varus. Here's another one of the carpus. You draw, and you need to get a nice straight view of these horses, but you draw a straight line down the leg. This one's pretty straight, right? Okay, I'm trying to draw that same line, assuming this is a really nice straight photograph here, and then I have the leg deviating laterally from a certain point. Okay, so I'm straight to the carpus, and then I deviate laterally. Same here, a little bit more advanced, so that would be a carpal valgus. All right, so you guys tell me, what do we have here? What do we have in the dark one here? A lot of stuff. First of all, where's the joint that's the problem is distal to? Oh, we should know what this is called. So, is this one normal? Yeah, that's pretty normal. Tell me when to stop. No. Yeah, what is that? That good. Also called the metacarpophalangeal joint here, okay? You have to know that, so you remember that. So fetlock is metacarpophalangeal joint. Yeah, you're exactly right. So we come down, we're pretty straight, and then we're deviating laterally or medially? Medially, which makes this what? Varus, fetlock varus. And then this guy here, ignore the fact that it's what? Valgus, what valgus? Yeah, carpal valgus. Okay. So draw your straight line, all of a sudden you're turning a corner and you're going laterally, so you have a valgus. And I don't know if this will work for you, but the way I remember varus versus valgus is that I'm looking at it and it's kind of like drawing an L. So L for lateral, L for varus. You could mix that up and say, well, this looks like an L in this direction. But so if it doesn't help you, it doesn't help you. But I think about it as like, if I'm looking at it this way here, I've got my L. They're both going outwards. Right, what do we have here? Carpal valgus. Yeah, which leg? Oh, right, yeah, sure, of course. It's not okay. What about this? So, talk to me about the right front. Okay, carpal valgus, good. And left front? Yeah, I would actually say, and I hear why some of you guys are maybe saying fetlock. I think the major problem here is the carpal varus here, because it's basically showing like this. So the big problem is here is the carpus. The fetlock maybe is compensating a little bit for it, but carpus is the problem. This actually has a specific name. It's called wind swept. So if you can imagine like Nicole standing there and like this. So wind swept. So basically like they're the opposite. All right, so doesn't happen just with the front legs? What?
Even if it was swept?
Even if it was what?
Wait, there was no swept.
Yeah, it's like, you're either like this or you're like that. So this is the hind end, so what would be going on here? Also looks windswept, right? Yeah, tarsal. Tarsal, so if this is the left hind, what's this? Tarsal valgus, comparing it. And on the other side? Yeah. Good, easy, right? So, how how does this stuff happen? So first of all, we have to think about how growth occurs. Because we're talking in the majority of cases here about foals, about developing new horses. So where does a normal, a majority of longitudinal growth occur? So here's a normal anatomy. Remember, you've got your diaphysis, you've got your metaphysis, your physis, and your epiphysis. Okay. So, the answer's already there. So it should appear evenly across the physis. Now, what's the name of the physis? Like the colloquial name? Growth plate. Okay, that tells you something, right? So it should occur evenly across the physis. So it's the same amount on this side as on this side. Now, the reason I talk about this is that there's multiple reasons why you can have angular deformity. The most common one being disproportionate growth across the growth plate. So this side is growing a lot, and this side is growing less. Okay, so that just makes it like start to turn. If you've got one side growing more, it just produces that angular. Okay, what I'm showing here is basically what we call a physitis. I think they used to call it epiphysitis, but it's not actually to do with epiphysis, so that's an incorrect name. Physitis, you see these wavy lines here? Okay, don't confuse those with joints. This is carpus, right? Here are normal joints. Those are there regardless of the age. Okay, this is a growth plate. This is a young horse with an open growth plate, okay? You see the sclerosis right here? The, more radio opaque part. That's an indicator of inflammation in that area, which can occur, we'll talk about a little bit later, for a couple of different reasons, but what can happen here is not a septic process usually, but it's just an inflammation that happens in that growth plate, physitis, itis being inflammation of the physis. And one side is like usually more affected than the other side, and there's a bunch of inflammation, it slows down the growth, and the other side is still growing, so it creates that abnormal amount of growth. Other reasons. So this is the main reason. Let's talk about other reasons. Perinatal means downward, right? So other stuff that can happen in the very young age of a foal is incomplete ossification of cuboidal bones. And I'm going to quickly just go on to this next slide and come back to it. Cuboidal bones are these. Okay, so we're looking at a carpus and a baby foal. All right. So here's your growth plate, and these are your joints. See all these squares? Okay, this is what normal looks like. Look at this. Where are those squares? Okay. They're not there yet, because what are they before they turn to bone? Cartilage. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go back to the slide. So incomplete ossification of cuboidal bones means when they're born, they come out not fully cooked. So they're coming out, and what should be bone is still cartilage. It should have turned to bone in utero before the foal was born, but for some reason it's still cartilage. All right. Why? Can be a couple different reasons. Foal is premature, just was born too early, or they're twins. Horses don't do well with having twins, and usually come out really just mature. Placentitis, metabolic disease, some sort of disease of the mare. Basically, something made the other not cook the foal right. Okay. All right, so when we have cartilage, it's soft, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Most foals are not standing perfectly square like a horse is. When you see a foal come out, look at that picture there. They're kind of like spiders. You've got these big old long legs, and they just kind of move over. They're not standing square, so they're kind of standing like that. If I have something soft and I'm standing like this a whole lot, what's going to happen to one side of the soft thing? Squish, right? Yeah, it's not going to be nice and straight and like an even square that just maybe gets squished from the middle. It's going to end up like that. Some wonky shape, okay? And then what happens as the foal matures? It's got a wonky shaped thing part of it. It's going to turn to bone, right? And then the bone is going to be that wonky shaped thing. Now, what happens? Is that foal going to be normally athletic and have a normal joint? What's going to happen? Yeah, what always happens to arthritis, right? Okay, so think about it as like you have this thing that's normally not going to be loading stuff right, but it's not bone, a normal foal. It'll straighten up over the first couple weeks, it'll be fine. But if that cartilage is being squished, it's going to stay that way, and then you end up with a messed up joint. I think we talked about all this. The other thing here is laxity of periarticular structures. Big long word, but it means like your collateral ligaments that keep you standing straight are floppy. Okay? So it just means like your ligaments are not strong enough and they kind of just let you flop one way or the other. Don't worry about that later. That's kind of mostly self-explanatory. Your ligaments just aren't tough enough to make you stand straight. All right, so here you go. This is normal squares, okay? I think about it, these as squares. Your carpus looks like this and your hock looks like that. So when we're talking about this sort of thing, including ossification, you're really talking about carpus or hock. Not so much like fetlock. They don't have cuboidal bones, it's just bone on bone. All right, so other stuff that can happen later on. Now, what we just talked about is like brand new baby. So brand new baby, laxity of periarticular structures, they come out floppy or they come out completely hooked in terms of. As we get older, let's say your foals started out normally. Your foals started out normally, and now something's going wrong. All right. We can get into this a couple different ways. Unbalanced nutrition can create a disproportionate growth at the level of the physis. That's kind of alluding to that physitis I showed you the image of before with the inflammation in the physis and growth plate. Now, a lot of times, these are your really good-looking colts. Okay? They're good-looking colts and fillies. The owners are really proud of them. They're feeding them well. They're like, oh, look how big and fast-growing and well-muscled my colt is. And all of a sudden, his knees are kind of hot and painful and swollen, and he's limp a little bit. And now he's starting to develop a varus or a valgus or something like that. So this can have to do with the fast-growing ones. Also, if they have an imbalance of vitamins and minerals. Okay. So let's say they're giving them like something that's really high in calcium and they're not balancing it with the phosphorus. That's when you end up with these situations where you irritate the physes and then you end up growing abnormally even though you started out okay. Other thing that can go on is this excessive exercise and trauma. That there's nothing really. That's basically what it says. So too much exercise and trauma, microfractures, irritating, allows them to close early in that physis if there's that much damage. All right. You do need a decent amount of exercise to create a normally growing foal. Remember when we were talking about OCDs, one of the things that implicated OCD is not enough exercise, and the other thing was too much exercise. So you can't say, oh, I'm not going to let this happen by foam, you'll lock yourself. It doesn't work that way. Just, moderation and everything is really the way to go. This is kind of just what we talked about here. I'm going to leave you guys to go through this chart. It's too small a word for me to go through. But this really breaks it down nicely into stuff that happens around birth and stuff that happens later on and how you end up with angular deformities. So use this as a study guide to make sure you understand the pathways of what happens. So how do we diagnose these guys? Now some of them are obvious, right? We saw those pictures and the foals were like. So inspection is a big one. Now remember, foals don't stand straight. What you want to do when you're inspecting these guys is to watch them walk towards and away from you. Usually you walk them, but you walk the mare and then the foal walks alongside the mare, skitters back and forth or something like that. You have to watch it moving rather than just standing still. Manipulation, that's the second one. Can you, holding the leg, take the leg and put it into the position it should be? Or is it stuck there? So if you can move it back into what looks like a straight leg, you've probably got incomplete ossification, or you've got those laxity of the periarticular structures of those collateral ligaments. Now, if you imagine you had one where there was a whole bunch of abnormal bone growth up in the physis, do you think that would be something you could manipulate back to normal? No, the bone is already set, right? It grew that way. But if it's just because something is squishy or lax, then you can fix it. Radiographs will help you determine where the problem is if you're not sure, and of course look for those cuboidal bones that haven't been fully formed. Okay, so here's a radiograph here on the left. And with these little folds, you can actually usually put the plate behind both front legs and take one image, and you got them both on the same film, like this. So this one you can see there's a line drawn straight down the metacarpus, through the carpal bones, through the metacarpus. Did I say that right? No, radius. So radius, carpus, and then metacarpal bones here. And you can see up here, you're starting with a line down the radius, and then clearly you have to change direction and create an angle to get back to the metacarpus, right? So this can be useful as you try to correct these things. We can take one at the beginning, measure this angle, see like, that's 15 degrees or whatever, And then as we try to correct this fold, we can take more radiographs and see when we're coming back to normal. Look at that, there's just nothing in there. So early diagnosis is critical, especially the complete ossification. This is what I was trying to remind to you before. So this is bone now, right? You're not fixing that. Okay. So this was like this, and then it turned into this because this was not corrected, during the process of the full ossifying. The V is not going to be sound on that. So where does this happen? I showed you a bunch of carpal valves, carpal varus, right? All right. When we're talking about the disproportionate growth, which is the most common way for this to start, you're going to be dealing with the distal radius. So let's say if I had a carpus, let's go back up here. So if I have a carpal, what would this one be? Valgus, okay? Usually the problem is the distal radius, right here. Okay. Now, remember, we're not talking about like incomplete ossification here. We're talking about the usual way this happens, which is that fasciitis in disproportionate growth. Okay, so distal radius, or in the tarsus, it would be the distal tibia. Okay, so this is the tarsus. This is not the case because obviously this is incomplete ossification, right? But if this was just a disproportionate growth, it would be here, distal tibia, well, right there, okay. Distal physis of the metacarpus or metatarsus 3. So that's when I'm talking about a fetlock varus or valgus, okay, which usually the bone above where the problem is. So let's go back. So this one, we call it a carpal valgus. It occurs in the bone above where the problem is, distal radius. Let's go back here. All right, so this one, tarsal valgus. Let's pretend this is not an incomplete ossification or something like this. Just pretend this is a disproportionate growth. Where is it going to occur? Distal tibia. So it's above the location of problem. This guy? Where is that going to be occurring? Distal cannon bone, yep, so distal metacarpus. Okay. But also it can be proximal P1 in that valve. Okay, so non-surgical treatment. We break this into, different things get different treatments, all right? So stall rest, definitely useful for those incomplete ossifications. So they come out, they have straight limbs, you can manipulate them back to being straight, but you were worried about that fold. You took an x-ray when it was born, it didn't look mature to you, so you took that x-ray, and you're like, oh no, there's no bone in those cuboidal implants. So, I'm not going to send this one out to gallop around the field with mom, right? This is going to be one to keep in a stall. You're going to, be doing things like splinting, we'll get to. Take radiographs, monitor it. When it looks like it's ossifying normally, then you can send it back out to a little more normal. So disproportional fascial growth with adequate ossification. You can try stall rest. You're going to be probably doing other stuff besides stall rest, but stall rest is appropriate for those guys too. Laxity with adequate ossification. So they're floppy because their collateral ligaments are not fully, firmed up, but their cuboidal bones are okay. All right. Keep an eye on this. I don't have yellow on here. So they need exercise. Okay. And this goes along with hyperextension. We'll talk about later too. These guys will not get better unless you let them have some exercise. So the more bandage, the more rest you give something that's too lax, the more it's going to stay lax. Kind of the opposite. If you have something that you want to make more lax, you would put a heavy bandage and not rest on that. So laxity with adequate ossification, they need to exercise at least somewhat. So splinter casts. With that incomplete ossification, remember we said they didn't stand straight normally, right? What we have to do while they're in their stall, while they're trying to ossify that cartilage, is to help them stand straight as much as possible. So you have the alignment for that cartilage to maintain the normal appearance while it ossifies. So here we have a little, splinter cast or something like that on this baby here. And it's just helping him stand straight. principles of this, you're not gonna do a cast like you would with a fracture where you go all the way through the foot. They need to have some weight bearing, they need to have some amount of kind of movement in the tendons and bones. Otherwise they get osteopenic or they get further laxity in your tendons. I really don't love casts on babies. If I'm going to use a cast, what I would do is put the cast on and then cut the cast off immediately in like a bivalve. So almost like a clamshell. So you put the cast on and then you zip it off and then you can place it back together again. You place it back together and you just take it on. Now we can take it off every day, look for sores. You know how thin that little baby skin is? Really in anything. And in horses, remember, there's so little soft tissue between the bone and like the outside row. So if you put that cast on, the soles are growing really fast. You get sores so fast with that. I really like either splints or the bivalve cast, but it's in the book. You can put a cast if you're careful. Just be really careful. Hoof manipulation. So there are little kind of extensions you can put on a foal's foot and glue it on here, these little thingies here. So basically what you'll do is that with a valgus, you will shorten the lateral side. So these are varus, right? So we'll kind of think about the opposite of this. So you'll shorten the lateral hoof wall, and I mean just run your file over it, run your rasp. It's not like a whole lot of cutting, it's just like a little bit of shortening. And then put your extension on the medial side. And this is the converse, so this is the varus, so they've probably, rasped lightly the medial side and put the extension on the lateral side. Okay. Do you understand the principle of that? It's like, if you're trying to stand like this, what you're trying to do is make it difficult for that side to be pressing down into the ground and to further the abnormal posture. So you're kind of using that extension to prevent them from being able to continue the role that they're already trying to do.